Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, watching the holographic display that showed the impenetrable shimmer of the human space barrier stretching across thousands of light-years. For 300 years, this energy field had protected humanity's territory from unwanted visitors. The barrier was more than just a defensive measure, it was a statement, a declaration that humans had learned from their violent past and would control who entered their domain. "Admiral, we're receiving the daily patrol reports," Lieutenant Commander Torres announced from his station. "All sectors showing green. No anomalies detected." Sarah nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of the tactical displays. At 52, she had spent her entire career in the Human Defense Force, rising through the ranks during the peaceful years when the barrier kept them safe. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her uniform bore the insignia of someone who had never actually fought a real war, only simulations and training exercises. "Any word from the diplomatic channels?" she asked, turning to her communications officer. "The Zalani Trade Union is still requesting permission to establish a commercial route through Sector 7, came the reply. "The Hegemony Council is asking for scientific exchange permissions. Standard requests, Admiral. All following proper protocols." This was how it had always worked. Alien species who wanted to enter human space filed formal requests, waited for approval, and were escorted by human vessels if permission was granted. The system had prevented conflicts, maintained peace, and allowed humanity to thrive without the constant threat of invasion or unwanted contact. Sarah walked to the massive viewport that dominated the bridge's front wall. Beyond the transparent aluminum, space looked deceptively peaceful. Stars twinkled in the distance, and occasionally a human cargo ship would pass by, its engines leaving brief trails of ionized particles. She could see the faint distortion where the barrier began, like looking through water. "Admiral Chun to the bridge," came the urgent voice over the intercom. Sarah frowned. She was already on the bridge. "This is Admiral Chun. I'm on the bridge. Admiral, this is Ensign Rodriguez in Deep Space Monitoring. We have multiple contacts approaching the barrier in Sector 12. Large signatures, unknown configuration." Sarah's heart rate increased. "Put it on the main display." The hologram shifted to show a three-dimensional map of Sector 12. Red dots appeared at the edge of the display, moving steadily toward the barrier. As Sarah watched, more information populated around each contact. "Estimated size?" she asked. "Each vessel appears to be approximately 2 kilometers in length. 15 ships total, Admiral." 2 kilometers. That was larger than humanity's biggest dreadnoughts. Sarah had never seen anything like it in the fleet databases. "Are they transmitting any identification codes?" "Diplomatic frequency requests." "Negative, Admiral. Complete communication silence." This was unprecedented. In 3 centuries of barrier operations, no species had ever approached human space without first establishing contact through the proper channels. Every civilization in this part of the galaxy understood the protocols. "Time to barrier contact. 17 minutes at current velocity." Sarah's mind raced. The barrier had never been tested against a coordinated assault by ships of this size. In theory, it was impenetrable. In practice, it had never faced a serious challenge. "Send a message on all frequencies," she ordered. "Unknown vessels, you are approaching the human space barrier. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions. Failure to respond will be considered a hostile act." The communications officer worked frantically at his console. "Message transmitted, Admiral." No response. Sarah watched the red dots continue their approach. Each second brought them closer to the barrier, closer to a confrontation that could shatter 300 years of peace. "Alert the fleet," she commanded. "All ships to defensive positions. Activate the barrier's secondary defense protocols." Across human space, klaxons began to sound. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols suddenly changed course, forming defensive formations near major population centers and strategic installations. The peaceful routine of centuries was shattered in minutes. "Admiral, the lead vessels are reaching the barrier now." Sarah held her breath as she watched the display. The barrier had never failed. It couldn't fail. But as she watched, the first alien ship touched the shimmering energy field and kept going. The barrier flickered, sparked, and then simply parted like water around the massive hull. "Impossible," someone whispered on the bridge. One by one, all 15 ships passed through the barrier as if it didn't exist. The most advanced defensive system in human history had been rendered useless in seconds. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the lead vessel." Sarah's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. On screen, the image that appeared was unlike anything in the human database. The being had elongated features, silver skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light, and eyes that held an expression of profound sadness. Humans of this space. The being spoke in perfect English, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the mind. "I am Commander Zephyx of the Astral Collective. We come not as conquerors, but as messengers. We bring warning of something that approaches your realm, something that will destroy all life in this galaxy." The alien paused, and Sarah could see exhaustion in those strange eyes. "We have crossed your barrier without permission because we carry information that cannot wait for your diplomatic processes. And we have come knowing we can never return home, for the journey we have taken has changed us in ways that make return impossible." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Chen stared at the blank screen, where the alien's face had been moments before. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the frantic efficiency of people who had trained for this scenario, but never believed it would actually happen. The reality of 15 massive alien ships inside human space had transformed their peaceful patrol into humanity's first potential interstellar crisis in 3 centuries. "Analysis of their transmission?" Sarah asked, her voice cutting through the tension. Lieutenant Commander Torres looked up from his console, his face pale. "Linguistic analysis confirms the alien spoke flawless English, but there are subsonic frequencies in the voice pattern that suggest it might be artificially generated. The translation technology required to achieve that level of accuracy would be incredibly advanced. More advanced than our barrier penetration should have allowed," Sarah muttered. She turned to her tactical officer. "Status on fleet positioning." 67 ships moving to intercept Admiral. Admiral Harrison's 3rd Fleet is 12 hours out. The 5th Fleet is repositioning from the outer sectors. We'll have 200 ships within 24 hours. Sarah nodded grimly. 200 ships against 15 alien vessels sounded like favorable odds, until she remembered that these aliens had casually bypassed humanity's most sophisticated defense system. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "the alien commander is requesting direct communication with you specifically. Personal channel. How do they know who I am?" "Unknown, ma'am, but the message is specifically addressed to Admiral Sarah Chen, Commanding Officer of Human Space Defense Sector 12. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The fact that these aliens had detailed intelligence about human command structure suggested this encounter was far from random. "Put it through to my ready room. I'll take it privately." "Admiral, protocol suggests." "I know what protocol suggests, Commander, but we're in uncharted territory now." Sarah headed toward her private office. "Maintain defensive positions, but do not fire unless fired upon. I want to hear what they have to say." In her ready room, Sarah activated the secure communication system. The alien commander's face appeared on her private screen, and this time she could see more detail. The being's silver skin seemed to pulse with a faint internal light, and there were markings on its forehead that might have been scars or some form of ceremonial decoration. "Admiral Chen," Commander Zephyx said, "I apologize for the deception of breaching your barrier without permission. In our desperation, we chose necessity over diplomacy." "What desperation?" Sarah asked. "You claimed to bring a warning. About what?" The alien's expression grew even more somber. "Admiral, are you familiar with the concept of a galactic extinction event?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Theoretical astrophysics suggests several possibilities. Gamma-ray bursts, galactic center instabilities, wandering black holes. All of those pale before what approaches. We call it the silence, a wave of destruction that moves through the galaxy, consuming not just matter and energy, but the very possibility of life itself. Wherever the silence passes, nothing can ever live again. The alien paused, and Sarah could see what looked like pain in those strange eyes. 3 years ago, our home worlds detected the approaching wave. We had perhaps 50 years before it reached our sector. Every species in our region of the galaxy began desperate research, looking for solutions, defenses, or escape routes. And you found something. We found that only one species in this galaxy has the technological capability to potentially stop the silence. Your species, Admiral Chen. Humanity. Sarah felt the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. That's impossible. We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy. The Hegemony Council alone has technologies we can barely comprehend. Commander Zephyx leaned forward, and the intensity in its gaze was unmistakable. The Hegemony Council and every other advanced species have focused their development on manipulation of existing universal constants. Faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, matter conversion. But humanity has developed something unique, the ability to create stable dimensional barriers. The barrier. Sarah realized what the alien was implying. Your human space barrier doesn't just keep others out, Admiral. It represents a fundamental breakthrough in dimensional engineering that no other species has achieved. The barrier exists partially outside normal spacetime, which is why it's been so effective. If it's so effective, how did you get through it? The alien's expression grew sad. Because we paid a price that makes return impossible. To penetrate your barrier, we had to phase shift our entire fleet into the same dimensional space your barrier occupies. The process is irreversible, Admiral. My people are dying even as we speak. Sarah stared at the screen in horror. You're telling me you condemned your entire fleet to death just to deliver a message? 15 ships with skeleton crews, Admiral. The alternative was the extinction of all life in this galaxy. We determined it was an acceptable sacrifice. What do you need from us? Commander Zephyx's image flickered, and Sarah realized the alien was indeed deteriorating before her eyes. The silence will reach human space in approximately 47 years. The dimensional technology that creates your barrier can be adapted to create a galaxy-wide protective field, but only if you begin preparations immediately. We bring the computational models and scientific data necessary to begin the project. Why should we trust you? You invaded our space. Because, Admiral Chen, we are about to prove our sincerity in the most absolute way possible. The alien's voice was growing weaker. Our ships will not survive another 12 hours in this dimensional state. We will die here, in your space, as proof that our warning is genuine. No species would sacrifice everything for a deception. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone in her ready room with the crushing weight of a revelation that could change everything. Outside her viewport, she could see the alien ships holding position, making no aggressive moves, simply waiting to deliver their message and die. She activated her communicator. All senior staff to the conference room immediately. And contact Earth Command. Tell them we have a code black situation. First contact with existential implications. As Sarah headed to the conference room, she couldn't shake the image of Commander Zephyx's dying eyes, or the terrible possibility that these aliens might be telling the truth. The conference room aboard the U.S. Defiant had never been designed for a meeting that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Admiral Chen sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her senior officers and a hastily assembled team of scientists who had been transported aboard via emergency shuttle. The holographic display showed the 15 alien ships, their energy signatures noticeably weakening with each passing hour. Status report, Sarah announced. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief xenobiologist who had arrived from the research station at Luna Base, spoke first. Admiral, our scans confirm what the alien commander told you. The ships are experiencing rapid molecular decay. Whatever process they use to penetrate the barrier is literally tearing them apart at the atomic level. How long do they have? Sarah asked. 8 hours, maybe less. The decay is accelerating. Commander Torres leaned forward. Admiral, we've completed our analysis of the data package the aliens transmitted. The scientific information is extraordinary. The mathematical models describing this silence Phenomenon are unlike anything in our databases, but they're internally consistent and based on physics principles we recognize. Dr. James Mitchell, the astrophysicist who had been pulled from his retirement on Mars, activated his own data pad. Admiral, I've been studying the galactic extinction models. If these calculations are correct, we're looking at something that makes gamma-ray bursts look like flashlight beams. This silence isn't just destructive, it fundamentally alters the quantum structure of space-time to make life impossible. Sarah felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Dr. Mitchell, in your professional opinion, could this threat be real? The elderly scientist was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, 3 hours ago I would have said no. But the mathematical framework these aliens have provided explains several unexplained phenomena we've observed at the galactic edge. Dark zones where no signals originate, regions where space itself seems to be empty in ways we didn't understand. And their claim about our barrier technology? Dr. Vasquez pulled up a three-dimensional model of the human space barrier. I've been studying this system for 20 years, Admiral. I always knew it was more sophisticated than we publicly acknowledged, but I never realized the dimensional implications. If the aliens are right about the barrier existing partially outside normal space-time, then yes, it could theoretically be adapted for galactic protection. Theoretically, Sarah repeated. What about practically? The energy requirements would be enormous. We'd need to construct massive dimensional anchors throughout the galaxy, coordinate with every major spacefaring civilization, and develop technology that currently doesn't exist. The project would take decades. How many decades? Dr. Mitchell consulted his calculations. If we began immediately and devoted every resource available to humanity, 40 years minimum. Sarah felt her heart sink. The aliens said the silence would arrive in 47 years. 7 years margin for error, Commander Torres observed grimly, assuming everything goes perfectly. Admiral, Communications Officer Parker spoke up. We're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet. Commander Zefix is requesting to speak with you again. Sarah looked around the table. Recommendations? We need more information, Dr. Vasquez said. If these beings are telling the truth, they might have additional data that could help. If they're lying, talking to them won't make the deception worse, Commander Torres added. Put it through to the main display, Sarah ordered. Commander Zefix appeared on screen, but the deterioration was shockingly visible. The alien silver skin had dimmed considerably, and its movements seemed labored. Admiral Chun, Zefix said, its voice now carrying a distinct electronic distortion. I do not have much time remaining. There are additional details you must know. We're listening. The silence is not a natural phenomenon. It was created by a species that existed near the galactic core billions of years ago. They built it as a final weapon when they realized they faced extinction from their own wars. The silence was meant to ensure that if they could not survive, no other species would evolve to replace them. The conference room fell silent. The idea that they were facing the vindictive weapon of an extinct civilization added a terrifying new dimension to the threat. How do you know this? Sarah asked. Because we found their ruins, Admiral. Before we departed for your space, our archaeologists discovered artifacts that contain the silence's activation records. This weapon has been dormant for eons, but something has triggered its activation sequence. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. What triggered it? The expansion of faster-than-light travel throughout the galaxy. The silence was designed to activate when it detected sufficient technological development among younger species. Your species' rapid expansion and the creation of your barrier technology appear to have been the final activation trigger. Sarah felt a chill of responsibility. You're saying humanity caused this? No, Admiral. Humanity and every other spacefaring species together created the conditions for activation. But that means you also have the capability to stop it. The ancient species built a shutdown mechanism into the silence, but it requires dimensional technology that only humanity has developed. Commander Zefix's image flickered dangerously. Admiral, my ship's computers contain detailed schematics for the dimensional anchors needed to create a galactic barrier. But more than that, we have coordinates for the silence's control center. if a small team could reach those coordinates and activate the shutdown sequence. The transmission cut out as the alien commander collapsed. When the image stabilized, Zephyx was clearly struggling to remain conscious. "Commander," Sarah called out. "What are the coordinates?" With tremendous effort, Zephyx raised its head. "The coordinates are being transmitted now. But Admiral, the control center is at the exact point where the silence will enter this galaxy. Any ship that goes there will arrive, just as the wave hits. It would be a one-way mission." The alien's voice was barely a whisper now. "Choose wisely, Admiral Chun. Build the galactic barrier and save billions, or send a small team to attempt the shutdown and risk everything on a desperate gamble. We have given you both options. The choice is yours." The transmission ended permanently as Commander Zephyx's life signs flatlined. Sarah stared at the dark screen, knowing that 15 alien beings had just died to give humanity the most important decision in galactic history. Around the table, her officers and scientists waited for her to speak. "Dr. Vasquez, how long to analyze the alien data completely?" 6 hours, Admiral." "Commander Torres, prepare a priority message to Earth Command and the Colonial Council. Include everything we've learned." Sarah stood up, feeling the weight of 47 years pressing down on her. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a decision to make that will affect every living thing in the galaxy. Let's make sure we get it right." 6 months had passed since the alien fleet died in human space, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have anticipated. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Fortress Prime, a massive space station that had been constructed at the edge of human space specifically to coordinate what had become known as the Galactic Defense Initiative. The conference room was larger now, equipped with holographic communication systems that allowed real-time discussions with representatives from 47 different species. The Hegemony Council, the Zolani Trade Union, the Crystalline Collective, and dozens of other civilizations had put aside centuries of territorial disputes to focus on a single, overwhelming priority: survival. "Admiral Chun," came the translated voice of Ambassador Threx of the Hegemony Council. The insectoid being's image flickered slightly due to the distance of the transmission. "Our engineering teams have completed construction of the first-dimensional anchor in the Outer Rim territories. However, we're encountering problems with power stabilization." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as the project's chief scientific coordinator, activated her data display. "The power fluctuations are expected, Ambassador. We're pushing dimensional manipulation technology beyond anything previously attempted. Each anchor requires the equivalent energy output of a small star." "Which brings us to the resource allocation problem," added Chancellor Vex of the Trade Union. "We've committed 90% of our industrial capacity to anchor construction, but we're falling behind schedule. At current production rates, we'll complete the galactic barrier network in 43 years. Sarah felt the familiar weight of impossible mathematics. "For years too late." "Unless," came a new voice from the communication array. Dr. James Mitchell's image appeared from his research facility on Titan. "Unless we implement the backup plan." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Dr. Mitchell meant by the backup plan: the suicide mission to the Silence's control center. "Dr. Mitchell," Sarah said carefully, "what's the current status of that option?" "We've analyzed the coordinate data provided by the Astral Collective extensively. The control center is located at the exact point where the Silence will breach the galactic edge. Our computers project that a ship could reach those coordinates approximately 6 hours before the Silence arrives." Ambassador Threx's antennae twitched nervously. 6 hours to locate and activate an ancient alien shutdown mechanism. The probability of success seems extremely low. "Low, but not impossible," Dr. Mitchell replied. "We've developed new scanning technology based on the dimensional principles used in our barrier systems. A properly equipped ship could potentially locate the control systems quickly." Sarah walked to the massive viewport that showed the construction activity throughout the sector. Hundreds of ships moved back and forth, carrying materials and personnel for the anchor construction project. It was the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. "What about the ship?" she asked. "What would it take to build something capable of surviving the trip?" Dr. Vasquez brought up new schematics. We've designed the U.S. Prometheus, a ship built around the same dimensional phase technology the Astral Collective used to penetrate our barrier. The difference is, we've solved the molecular decay problem. The ship could maintain structural integrity for approximately 12 hours in dimensional phase. Long enough for the mission? Theoretically, yes. But Admiral, there's no way to return. The silence will make the journey back impossible, and even if it didn't, the dimensional phase technology can only be used once. Sarah turned back to the conference table. Around her, the representatives of dozens of species waited for her words. She realized that despite all the cooperation, despite all the shared resources and collaborative engineering, the final decision still rested with humanity, and specifically, with her. How many crew members would the Prometheus require? Minimum crew of 12, Dr. Mitchell answered. Specialists in dimensional engineering, alien archaeology, and combat systems. They would need to be prepared for anything. Chancellor Vex leaned forward in his transmission. Admiral Chun, surely there must be volunteers. The entire galaxy understands what's at stake. There are volunteers, Sarah replied quietly. The question is whether we ask them to make that sacrifice, or whether we commit everything to the barrier project and hope we can finish in time. Both, came an unexpected voice from the back of the room. Sarah turned to see Commander Marcus Webb, her former tactical officer, who had been promoted to head the new Interspecies Military Coordination Division. He strode forward with the confidence of someone who had made a decision. Commander Webb, Admiral, we don't have to choose between the options. We continue construction of the galactic barrier at maximum speed, and we simultaneously prepare the Prometheus mission as a backup. If the barrier is completed in time, the Prometheus doesn't launch. If we're running behind schedule in the final years, we have the suicide mission as our safety net. Ambassador Threx's translator rendered what might have been approval. A logical approach. Prepare both options simultaneously. The resource allocation would be enormous, Chancellor Vex pointed out. Less enormous than galactic extinction, Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. Sarah looked around the room, seeing determination in the faces of beings from across the galaxy. 6 months ago, most of these species had barely tolerated each other. Now they were willing to commit everything they had to a desperate gamble for survival. Dr. Mitchell, begin construction of the Prometheus immediately. Dr. Vasquez, accelerate the barrier project by any means necessary. Commander Webb, begin recruitment and training for the Prometheus crew. She paused, knowing that her next words would be remembered by history. And start looking for volunteers who understand they might be asked to save the galaxy by never coming home. As the conference ended and the various alien representatives signed off their communications, Sarah remained at the viewport, watching the construction activity. In the distance, she could see the framework of what would become the U.S. Prometheus, humanity's most advanced ship, and possibly the galaxy's last hope. The mathematics were still impossible. 47 years to prepare for something that would take 50 years to build properly. But for the first time since the Astral Collective had died delivering their warning, Sarah felt something like hope. They had options now. Desperate options, perhaps, but options nonetheless. 46 years, 8 months, and 12 days after the Astral Collective's sacrifice, Admiral Sarah Chin stood in the launch bay of the U.S. Prometheus. At 98 years old, she should have been retired, enjoying her twilight years on some peaceful colony world. Instead, she wore the uniform of a ship's captain for what she knew would be the last time. The Prometheus was beautiful in the way that only humanity's most desperate engineering could achieve. The ship stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull composed of dimensional phase materials that seemed to shift between states of matter. It was built for one purpose: to travel to the edge of the galaxy and either save or doom every living thing in it. Final systems check complete, Admiral, reported Captain Lisa Park, Sarah's chosen second-in-command. At 52, Park was the same age Sarah had been when this crisis began, and she carried the same mixture of determination and fear that Sarah remembered from those early days. Status of the galactic barrier? Sarah asked. 87% complete, came the reply from Dr. Elena Vasquez, now ancient at 91 but still sharp enough to coordinate the most complex engineering project in galactic history. We're 3 years behind schedule, but the remaining anchors will be operational within 18 months. Sarah nodded grimly. 18 months after the silence arrived. Too late. And the silence. 6 days out from the galactic edge, reported Commander Torres, now Admiral Torres, having taken Sarah's old position as head of human space defense. Our deep space monitors are picking up the dimensional disturbance. Admiral, it's worse than the projections. Sarah had seen the images. The silence wasn't just destroying solar systems as it passed, it was unmaking them. Stars, planets, and even the space between them simply ceased to exist, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at. Crew status. All 12 volunteers are aboard and ready, Captain Park replied. Dr. Mitchell's archaeological team, Commander Ramon's engineering specialists, and Lieutenant Colonel Hayes' security detail. Everyone understands the mission parameters. Sarah walked slowly through the launch bay, looking at the faces of the crew members making their final preparations. They were the best humanity had to offer, scientists, engineers, soldiers, and they had all volunteered for a mission with no possibility of return. Admiral, came a voice from the communication system. This is Earth Command. You have a priority message from the Galactic Council. Sarah activated her personal communicator. The image that appeared was a composite of all 47 species, now working together on the Barrier Project. Admiral Chun, spoke Ambassador Threx, who had become something like the unofficial voice of the Alliance. On behalf of every species in this galaxy, we want you to know that regardless of what happens in the next few days, your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your crew will be remembered forever. We're not dead yet, Ambassador, Sarah replied with a slight smile. But you are willing to die for people you've never met, on worlds you'll never see, for species you've barely encountered. This is what we have learned from humanity in these 47 years, that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The message ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She looked out through the launch bay's massive viewport at the construction activity still continuing around them. Even now, with the silence only days away, work continued on the galactic barrier. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked side by side, racing against time to complete humanity's design. Admiral, Captain Park approached. We're ready for departure. Sarah took one last look at the space station that had been her home for 4 decades. At 98, she should have been too old for this mission, but the truth was that no one else had the combination of experience, knowledge, and stubbornness necessary to see it through. All crew to stations, she announced over the ship's communication system. This is Admiral Sarah Chun assuming command of the U.S. Prometheus. Our mission is simple. Reach the Silence's control center and activate the shutdown sequence before the destruction wave enters our galaxy. She paused, looking around the bridge at the 12 people who had volunteered to die with her. I won't lie to you. The chances of success are minimal. We're flying into the path of something that has already destroyed countless civilizations. But we're not just representing humanity on this mission. We're representing every species that has ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The ship's dimensional drive began to hum with power that defied conventional physics. Prometheus requesting departure clearance, Captain Park announced. Clearance granted, came Admiral Torres' voice from the space station. Admiral Chun, Sarah, bring them home. Sarah settled into the captain's chair, feeling the weight of nearly 5 decades of preparation culminating in this moment. Through the bridge viewport, she could see the galactic edge in the distance, and beyond it, the approaching darkness of the silence. Engage dimensional drive, she ordered. The Prometheus shifted into phase space, and suddenly they were no longer bound by the normal rules of physics. The ship accelerated beyond light speed, beyond any speed previously achieved, racing toward a rendezvous with the most ancient and malevolent force the galaxy had ever known. As Sarah watched the stars blur past the viewport, she thought about Commander Zephyx and the Astral Collective, who had sacrificed everything to bring humanity this warning. She thought about the billions of beings across the galaxy who were depending on 12 humans to succeed where entire civilizations had failed. "Time to target?" she asked. "4 days, 17 hours, came the reply. Sarah closed her eyes and prepared for the most important 4 days in galactic history. Behind them, the incomplete barrier continued construction. Ahead of them, the silence waited. One way or another, the galaxy's long ordeal was almost over.